give the floor now to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much, President. There is a well-known adage that says, that which harms you can also help you grow. And this is a saying which makes my task considerably easier. Because it makes it easier for me to criticize the invitation extended to the executive director of the Syrian American Medical Society, SAMS, particularly in light of the praise heaped by the US delegation on this association, SAMS, and those working on the ground under its umbrella. I think that speaks volumes as to the extent to which this organization, the Syrian American Medical Society, is intertwined with a very active American intelligence system operating clandestinely in my country and indeed in other countries. It's an offshoot thereof. This is not an empty accusation, and it's not intended to be an accusation against all the work of this organization. But I do want to make it clear that given the activities it's been involved in, it has never succeeded in achieving consultative status in the United Nations. It submits a request every year, and its request is rejected every year by all member states for reasons with which we're all wearily familiar. That, I think, is a proper description of SAMS and exactly who they are, which makes it baffling that they were invited. You only have to look at their website to see that this organization is an organization that is attached to US aid. SAMS is a subsidiary, if you will. It is under the umbrella of US aid. And for 8 years, the gentleman who's now executive director of SAMS worked in Syria, worked in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now here. And all that time, his organization, the organization which he worked for,
U.S. Agency for International Development. It is an independent agency of the United States federal government with budget over $27 billion US. هكذا تقدم نفسها على موقعها.
This is how USAID describes itself in its very own website. The individual present with us this afternoon, who is speaking on behalf of the Syrian American Medical Society, SAMS, is an employee of USAID. There could be no beating around the bush, so he's an employee of the American administration of the federal government. So the invitation extended to him to address the Security Council should never have been issued. Moreover, he is American. He's not Syrian, which means that he does not have the right to speak about another state, a state that is not his own. His association, the Syrian American Medical Society, SAMS, does not have an agreement to work in Syria. So it's an organization that is operating illegally in Syrian territory. There's been no agreement for its presence there. Which leads us to a very important question that must be addressed, which is the legal illiteracy, which seems to have been demonstrated by some. But hiding behind a lack of familiarity with the law does not give one the right to ignore the resolutions of the Security Council or indeed the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations, as well as other documents such as the Geneva Convention, which do not allow an organization such as that one to work on the territory of a state without getting the authorization and agreement of said state in which it seeks to work. When the ICRC was established, its statute prohibited very clearly any association, whether it be a medical association or an association of any other ilk, to work in the territory of a state without the authority or agreement of that state. Resolution 46182, which many of us are familiar with, provides that nobody, no individual, no organization can engage in humanitarian activities in inverted commas without the authority and acquiescence of the national authorities of the country concerned. Paragraph 14 of the resolution on the pattern of conferences that we adopt every year stipulates most explicitly and without any possibility of misinterpretation that the rooms, the facilities, the buildings and premises of the United Nations cannot be used against the interests of a member state of this House, a member state of the United Nations. What else is there to add? Oh, but I do actually think there's one more important point I'd like to draw your attention to. The executive director of this organization, this association, whatever it may be, says that they have dispersed 14 million medical kits in Idlib. If you look at the activities of OCHA and their reports, Al-Nusra Front holds 99% of Idlib territory. Al-Nusra Front is a terrorist organization which has in its grip 99% of the territory of Idlib, where, surprise, surprise, this medical organization is active. Now, how can this medical organization, this medical society, work in an area controlled by a terrorist organization? This means forcibly that there must be cooperation between this organization and a terrorist group. This organization, SAMS, is therefore lending its support to terrorist organizations in Idlib. It is not in any way helping the civilians of Idlib.
With Al-Nusra Front, and it is dangerous to humanitarian workers on the ground to allege such a connection when there isn't one. So I just want to get that on the record, Mr. President, because this could put real lives at risk.
أعطي الكلمة لمندوب سوريا ليكمل بيان.
I give the floor back to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic to conclude his statement. This is a first for me, that the representative of a country interrupts the representative of another country in the middle of their statement to raise a point of order. I think that is beyond protocol. I don't think that is done. Whatever the case may be, I have simply laid out the facts and have asked legitimate questions and aired legitimate views. You may chew that over for yourselves. These are facts. This is information. You are free to verify it for yourself. But these are facts. These are not accusations, certainly not baseless accusations. President, my delegation has taken note of the 61st report on the implementation of those resolutions, which are supposed to be humanitarian resolutions, which are supposed to report on the efforts of the Syrian government and its institutions to improve the life and well-being of Syrian civilians and to boost their capacity to improve the deplorable humanitarian conditions that are the fruit of the civil war that was imposed upon my country. It is intended to cover all facets of that humanitarian reporting. I won't delve into the detail of said 61st report, which was published by those who have no links or interest in the well-being or security of the Syrian people. It is simply used as a vehicle to repeat the same tune of something that may have been true in the past, but remains the favorite tune of certain enemy governments. I think it worth pointing out that the focus of this report is Idlib, guided by the vision of OCHA and its open sources. It uses vague expressions, it uses vague language. It harks back to an era which we thought OCHA had put behind it, an era in which OCHA was exploited to be a front for the for certain countries who have influence in the Security Council and who are seeking to undermine the efforts of the Syrian government and to find pretext to point the finger at it and to make it an enemy rather than to cooperate and collaborate with it as a peer government. At a time when cities such as Raqqa, Hachin, Deir ez-Zor, Tal Ifrat, Palmyra, Eflin, Membej did not receive any attention from those who are preparing these reports, and this report in particular. They focus simply on Idlib with very vague expressions, refusing to use frank language without attributing responsibility, because they would have been forced to attribute responsibility for these war crimes, these crimes against humanity, to the international coalition, to the occupying Turkish forces, to the militia, and to the terrorist organizations who are affiliated and who are behind the dramatic and horrific plight of the civilians, including in areas occupied, such as Rukban camp. If those who are preparing these reports were being serious about it, we would not have the end product that we have. This is simply smoke in our eyes. They pretend to be neutral. They pretend to be unbiased, but they abundantly are. It is glaringly apparent they are not, and they remain silent on other serious issues which they should be drawing our attention to. This is very important information, President. Information that it behooves us all to acknowledge. Information according to which thousands of residents of Al-Hol camp who are terrorists wish to leave. What is the destination of these terrorists? What will their fate be? Will they travel to Turkey and be recycled before coming back to Syria to pursue their nefarious activities, as we've already seen in the northeast of Syria, and to target civilian areas which are currently enjoying security in the northwest of Syria? How did they get out of these camps? Who financed that? And then, as I've said, these terrorists reappear in states. They then come back for their destabilizing activities. We hear reference to the Islamic State in North Africa, to Islamic State in the Caucasus and Central Asia, IS-CCA. These mushroom everywhere. It seems that investment in terrorism is much more lucrative for certain member states of this organization rather than investment in the Sustainable Development Goals or investment in preserving the environment. They'd rather see entrenched conflict to further their own ends. Devil take the consequences, such as the mushrooming of Islamic State organizations. And it seems that they really don't want to take seriously their responsibility for non-proliferation. During the first humanitarian conference in Syria, we heard that there was a need to address foreign military, economic, and political meddling in order to overcome the humanitarian needs in Syria. We've heard that since the very first humanitarian conference. And this is something that should be decried, this meddling should be decried by the Security Council. I think there are some members of the Security Council who don't want to have a serious discussion on these core issues, which pertain to the noble humanitarian goals that should guide the work of this body. Representatives of Western governments want to talk about terrorism and to point the finger at my country when doing so. But some of these countries are investing in the training of tens of thousands of foreign terrorist fighters hailing from more than 100 member states of this organization. We have to ask ourselves the questions: who finances them? Who arms them? And we know who that is. Are people prepared to discuss economic terrorism, particularly the representatives of those Western states? Are they prepared to talk about the collective punishment that their governments mete out through the vehicle of coercive unilateral sanctions? These sanctions, which have no pity for children, for the elderly, for women, for the sick, are these colleagues willing to talk about the role of their governments in prolonging this crisis, which has now dragged on for a little more than 8 years? these governments that put roadblocks in the way of a political solution and thus heap further suffering on the Syrian people? Are they willing to discuss openly these questions? We know what the response will be. These governments are looking for pretexts. They're looking for excuses to avoid these discussions because that would shed light on their failings, their shortcomings, their egregious actions, particularly on the political front. I will refrain from reading out certain paragraphs that I have prepared for my statement, for fear that we might be erroneously accused of hostility against OCHA. We have achieved a great deal despite the challenges ranged against us, and we firmly believe that working together we could have done more still on the humanitarian front if certain of our partners in the United Nations had duly respected the principles of humanitarian work, first and foremost non-politicization, cooperation and collaboration with the Syrian government, neutrality, impartiality. The Syrian government bears chief responsibility for meeting the humanitarian needs of its people, and that should be respected. These Syrian people and the Syrian government cannot remain silent or inactive at a time when terrorists are taking control of its territory. No government would. No government would stand idly by when terrorists are targeting their civilians and doing so indiscriminately. It is clear that the Syrian government needs to defend its citizens, has the right to do so, and it must respond to those who fire missiles, who drop bombs, as has been duly confirmed by United Nations resolutions on counterterrorism activities, as well as by international law. To speak about deliberate targeting of civilians or civilian infrastructure by the Syrian government and its allies and partners is a gross distortion of the truth. These are baseless allegations. We reaffirm that our government will continue to work tirelessly to help its people, the Syrians, to put behind them this difficult time in their history by providing them with the support and services they need to be able to pick themselves up and move ahead and to rebuild what was destroyed by terrorists and outside aggression. Our position is crystal clear. To achieve that end, we need full respect for the sovereignty of the Syrian Arab Republic, for our territorial integrity. We will need a lifting of the unilateral coercive measures which are illegal. This will require support for Syria's own development efforts, and it will also require support for Syria's counterterrorism activities. It is time to put an end to the illegal presence of American, British, French and Turkish forces in Syrian territory, in the entire Syrian territory. I will leave it there. Thank you very much, President. I would like to thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for his statement.